We are the true Americans. We are in the right. God loves the Republicans, especially those of us rich and white. We don't approve of homosexuals or a woman's right to choose. Only we know what a family is. Only we know what is right for you. So join with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the fun-loving NRA and the fabulous Phyllis Schlafly.
Hey. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Ashley Perrian, and my co-host this week,
Don Baker.
Don Baker, thank you for helping us. We are live May 30th, and we are being sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday at the Crescent City Beignets on 6th Street, a couple blocks west of Lamar. That is every Sunday. It starts around 11:30 and goes until perhaps 1 o'clock or thereabouts. That is every Sunday. It's open to any atheist-friendly people. If you just want to come down and meet us, you don't have to be a member of the group or anything like that. Just come down, check us out, and chit-chat and have some beignets. That is every Sunday, except for the third Sunday of every month when we have our lecture series at the Austin History Center on 9th and Guadalupe. This upcoming month in June, I don't believe we actually have a lecture scheduled. We'll still be meeting there. But I don't believe we actually have a lecture scheduled, so we'll get you more details on that once we know. That's every third Sunday of the month. Every Monday night we have Godless Gamers at the house of Russell Glasser, one of our other co-hosts. If you go to our website, atheist-community.org, and send a link to the webmaster, he can give you more details on that one, location and stuff. That's at 7 o'clock every Monday night. On Thursdays, we have Atheist Happy Hour at Antonio's Tex-Mex on the southbound feeder of I-35, just a couple blocks south of 183. That all starts around 7:30 or so, and again, it's just open to anyone who wants to come in, and like I said, we'll just sit around, have a couple drinks, and enjoy chit-chat. Every other Saturday, we have our internet audio show, The Non-Prophets, which is hosted by Jeff D., co-hosted by Dennis Lubay, and produced by Russell Glasser. That is hosted on atheistnetwork.com, and that's every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30. This upcoming Saturday is an on week, meaning June 5th. They will be having a show that day. It's a little bit more political than the show. It's a great one to watch. It's by and for atheists, so it can be a little bit more hard-hitting than we can be on here sometimes. But it's a great show. Go ahead and check that out if you're interested in that. I believe that is it for our regular announcements. So I guess we can now go over to Don Baker, our co-host for the day.
Okay.
And you can get us started on what you got.
We have a rotating co-host format where we cycle through, and it's the co-host's responsibility to bring in some material to talk about. And
yes, I work them so hard.
Yeah. So we try to keep it interesting. Today I'm going to talk about whether the United States is a Christian nation or not, and I want to open this discussion or this topic with a little bit of a news piece that's happened recently, and that the Roman Catholic bishops have said that politicians who don't toe the party line and vote in accordance with the Vatican teachings are going to be denied communion in the church, and this has caused a little bit of a stir, partly because they seem to raise this flag when John Kerry started becoming more on the political scene. So Kerry's sort of been a lightning rod for this whole thing, and there's various levels of what's going on here, right? At the topmost level, it's the Catholic Church has these communion wafers, and by analogy, we might say, well, we have some cookies here, and I can decide to give Ashley a cookie or not, and they're my cookies, so it's certainly my decision whether I do that or not. But there's more to it than that. At a deeper level, these communion wafers, or the sacrament of communion, or the communion sacrament, is in a sense, kind of necessary for someone to ascend to heaven. So, in a sense, the denying communion is taking away someone's chances of getting to heaven. Right? It's a big deal. You know, and heaven is like, you know, eternal bliss for all time. Right? So that's like an infinite reward. So, you know, what would you do for an infinite reward?
Versus infinite punishment.
Versus infinite punishment, right? So you know, by golly, somebody's more than likely going to want to trade their vote for an infinite reward. I'd certainly, you know. Yes, there's a lot of these scams from Nigeria floating around the internet promising big rewards, but you know, if you're a true believer, then this is a big deal. So in effect, we have the Catholic Church or the bishops and such, in a sense, controlling the vote, which is problematic in my opinion. Still, you know, you could argue that the Catholic Church is a club, and they have these rules or the creed or whatever, and people need to follow the creed, and I can see that as well.
Do you know actually how much that is being enforced by the actual priests who are in charge at that particular?
It seems to vary a lot. I think some of the priests are quite serious about it, and actually picking out the politicians, and I think many of them have realized that it's kind of a practical problem, because not only do they have to keep track of who's a politician, but they also have to keep track of how they're voting and all this.
Yeah.
Right, so they're kind of, I think, getting the politicians themselves to censor themselves. But I think a more insidious thing in that is that, you know, if I wield power over a politician, then in effect I'm influencing much more than just that person. I'm influencing all of the people that are influenced by that person, right? So if we have people being unable to get contraceptives, for example, or unable to exercise their right to have an abortion, and lots of other things that the Catholic Church speaks against, then in effect you're taking away the free will of people who may not even be Catholics.
Yeah.
And I do have a problem with that. I think that's a bad thing.
Yeah. Not to actually get on a tangent or anything, but they had that problem here in Austin with I believe it was Seton Hospital, or was it Brackenridge? Or are they the same thing?
I can't remember. But one of the hospitals is controlled by the Catholic Church.
Exactly.
Right?
The Catholic Church actually won the bid on that. They started the hospital. A couple of years later, the Catholic Church came out and said, okay, no more abortions, no more birth control, no more family planning, no more anything like that. The church had to follow, therefore the hospital had to follow. Therefore, the hospital stopped giving out any form of birth control, any form of contraception, any form of anything like that. And so the city, to get around this, actually had to sell out the 5th floor of the building and say, this is not part of the hospital. This is now a different hospital
providing the complementary services, right?
And we have to duplicate all our services. So you've actually got to sign in twice when you go into the building for 2 different hospitals. You've got to get services from one, and then maybe you have to go to a different floor to get services from the other. And it's just this huge mess. It's costing everybody so much money because now they have to open up a second hospital. Just because somebody said, okay, no more condoms. So. Right.
So I think the upshot of this discussion is the Catholic Church has a lot of influence, and in fact, they're a sovereign nation. The Vatican is a sovereign nation, and so we have, another nation coming in meddling with U.S. politics and health services and all sorts of things in the United States. And Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, but he didn't have the kahunas to come in and muck with the United States like the Vatican's doing. So. I don't know. Thomas Jefferson had a really good quote that's very apropos here. He said, history, I believe, furnishes no example of a priest-ridden people maintaining a free civil government. This marks the lowest grade of ignorance which their civil as well as religious leaders will always avail themselves to their own purposes. So that seems very appropriate. So the question is, well, if the United States is a Christian nation, then this is not a big deal because the Catholic Church is arguably kind of a hub of Christian belief. Maybe it's all okay. Maybe it's okay. We certainly have a lot of Christians in the United States. We have 77% in a 2001 poll declare themselves Christian. But I think more interestingly, the United States is one of the most religiously diverse nations in the world. And so we have a lot of diversity, a lot of different people. So there's a number of people who have taken a stand on this Christian nation idea. And let me read you some quotes. Judge Moore, who is an Alabama former Supreme Court justice in Alabama. Yeah, we're already cringing. The infamous Ten Commandments judge said, America is a Judeo-Christian nation founded by Christians, and that the foundation of American law is the Bible and the Ten Commandments. So he said that. I don't believe it, but he said that. Pat Robertson says, the separation of church and state is a lie of the left, that there's no such thing. Jerry Falwell says, the idea that religion and politics don't mix was invented by the devil to keep Christians from running their own country. So
wow. Okay.
Pretty strong statement, right? John Ashcroft, Attorney General John Ashcroft, told the graduates of Bob Jones University that America has no king but Jesus.
Yep, no king.
No king.
We just cut it off earlier, that's all.
We've got a couple more here. Florida televangelist James Kennedy touted the standard Christian nation viewpoint. He said, as Christians, we should prefer and select Christians to rule over us. We would have far less trouble if we did. General William Boykin, who is infamous for being a general, but well, can you help me out here?
That was relatively recently. He had said something about talking about Islam and this whole war. We are fighting for Jesus Christ, and those other gods over there are lesser than our God.
Right. The Muslims are worshiping an idol, of course.
Yeah.
The Muslim God and the Christian God and the Jewish God are all the same.
The my God's bigger than your God argument.
Yeah. So he said, fighting a spiritual enemy. That our country is a Christian nation fighting a spiritual enemy that will only be defeated if we come against him in the name of Jesus, and that the enemy is a guy called Satan. And the terrorists are attacking us because we're a Christian nation. So he certainly believes we're a Christian nation.
Yeah.
And Chief Justice Anton Scalia said, God has the power of life and death, therefore governments who derive their power from God have the right to dispense life and death too.
Wow.
That's a scary quote,
That's
isn't it?
a little bit scary.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of folks that seem to think, we have a Christian nation here. That not only do we have a nation of Christians, but we have a nation that is run by Christian belief. So is that true? And the answer is no. And what's going on is there's kind of a myth being created, a myth being promoted and pushed out. And the myth is basically the idea that the United States was founded as a Christian nation. And that these religious values, the Christianity is under attack in the United States, so they can be not only they can be the majority, but they can also be the persecuted.
Yes.
So they can cry persecution at the same time, which is a very, very good trick.
Yeah, they often flip that coin, as in saying we have 77% of the population, therefore what we say goes. But then 2 weeks later, we are being so persecuted.
Yeah.
And the ACLU is out there winning everything.
That's right.
And we are being stomped out of everywhere, and now we can't pray in our schools, therefore we need the special protection.
Right, and they often distort.
You've got to pick one.
Okay. Another part of this is that the danger is that without faith in God in America, we'll lose his blessing. Right, and bad things will happen to us. So we need to protect our nation's religious heritage. This is kind of the mindset that's being promoted, and I would claim, I'm going to claim that the Christian nation idea is false. That we are a secular nation. We have a lot of Christians. We have a lot of other religions as well, and not only that. What's especially important, I think, is the founding documents of the United States, the belief of the founders, what they were trying to do. All of that is very clear, and it's been distorted by a lot of people along the way. So, so the goal is Americans United, Barry Lynn has said, is to erode the vitality of the church-state separation principle in order to Christianize the United States. So The real story is the United States was founded not on religion, but on a deep distrust of religion. The Founding Fathers came from countries they saw firsthand some of the abuses of religion. The Catholic Church in England was not well respected. They were very concerned about the abuse of power there. Before the founding of the United States, we had the Salem witch trials and all sorts of other abuses, and they were wise to conclude that the Founding Fathers, or that the source of a lot of these problems was religion itself, and that if you mix the religion with the power of the state, you really had problems. So there was this need to, in effect, keep a balance, a separation of powers between those. And this is not just church-state separation. They actually had a lot of ideas, a lot of related ideas. For example, they wanted to have within the government, they had the checks and balances of the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, and they were all checks and balances on each other. And it's the same idea in a different area where you have different groups that if one gets too powerful, the others can pull them down and keep them in check. Yeah. They were also very concerned about the corporations gaining too much power and controlling the United States. They thought that the free press was very important. And as a yet another checks and balance. So all of these things were part of the genesis of the United States, and these are very important principles by which our government was formed. And at the time, it was a very novel government, although it's been many of the themes that we came up with, or that our founding fathers came up with, have been duplicated in other constitutions and such. So those are really the themes. It's not Christianity, but freedom of religion, freedom to practice your religion or not practice religion, and freedom to the state shouldn't be meddling in that, and vice versa. Religion shouldn't be controlling the state. So, and we as atheists are very, very big on this. This is like one of our big things, is that we want to keep the church and state separate, because that sort of is best for everybody. Okay, so the Founding Fathers were mostly deists. So deism, for those in the audience that are not familiar with that, that's kind of, it's been called the absentee landlord religion, in the sense that it's the idea that there is an all-powerful God who created the universe, and that's it. He disappeared after that. He doesn't listen to prayers. He didn't communicate to people with the Bible. He no Jesus, none of that stuff. So deism is kind of a very
hands-off God.
Hands-off God, and they often use the term creator or natural God is the kind of phrase that you'll see in a lot of the early documents referring to this God, and I claim it's a pretty benign thing. George Washington was a deist, Ben Franklin, Ethan Allen, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, James Monroe. A very famous deist was Thomas Paine, who wrote The Age of Reason, where he criticized this idea that the Bible had any truth to it as some sort of mystic thing, and was actually pretty unpopular after doing that, and was called an atheist, even though he was a deist. Mm. So this begs the question: why would people of one religion create a country for another religion, right? Why would deists go create a country and make it a Christian country? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense at all. And I have lots of quotes here, and we can maybe do those later when we have callers, a little bit later. About the feelings of Jefferson and Madison, who were the primary architects of the Constitution, Madison especially, but we can skip those. But I'll just say that in summary, these guys wanted a separation of church and state, and they were very clear about that. And so we have in our Constitution, which is our founding document, we have the First Amendment that says the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And then there's lots of other clauses, but those are the clauses relevant to this. Article 6 of the Constitution says in part that let's see. I'll just go ahead and read it. The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the state of legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both in the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by an oath of affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall be required as a qualification to any office or public trust in the United States. So there's no test of public office. Although it's interesting to note that the Texas Constitution
Yes.
has a test of you know, you have to believe in God to become. But that's been overruled by the U.S. Constitution, because the U.S. Constitution takes precedence.
It's Texas. There's actually several states that have that in there, that if you're going to become within the government of the state for some reason, you have to take this oath saying, I swear under God, or something like that. And that is the legally required oath that you must take. Now, it's still in the books technically, just because it had, well, I believe it has been challenged, and it has been ruled unconstitutional. It's just still in the books.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's just one of these unenforceable
Right,
rules
it's one of
that's
these
sitting
things
there.
that's sitting there.
Exactly. They can't shoot buffalo from a second-story
Dangling
window or something like that.
So should we, you know, change our First Amendment to our Constitution? That might become in effect again. So
Yeah.
that's there, but I doubt that will ever happen. I hope that never happens. Okay. Well, what about the claim that the U.S. laws were based on the Ten Commandments? Well, that's false as well, as it turns out. In fact, this is such an old chestnut, an old myth, that even old Thomas Jefferson himself had to try to defeat that. He spoke against that. The truth is that our laws are based on British common law, which in turn were influenced by Romans and such, Roman law. But if you go back, these laws were all in effect, and all of the sort of main laws that we have were all in place before Christianity even reached Britain. So
Hammurabi's code, I believe, is actually one of the earliest documents, at least that I've
it's
heard
one of the earliest codified laws. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and that was well before any Christianity existed.
Right. Right. So these you know, things like killing and stealing and all that have all been part of these laws. So, what about the Pledge of Allegiance and the motto and some of these things? In God We Trust on the currency. Well, these are all added in the 50s during the Cold War, when we were trying to distinguish ourselves from those godless commies. You know, so we're better than them because we believe in God, and so we plastered this all sorts of places, but. You know, the pledge, as most of our readers know, I think, or most of our listeners know, that originally didn't mention under God at all, and it was added in the 50s. So anyway, so where does all this come from? Where would this Christian nation idea come from? Given that you know, history pretty clearly tells us that's not the case. Well, I think that, you know, we have kind of a little bit of wishful thinking going on here. That's one thing going on, but we have this is kind of a Protestant myth. I think it comes from this Protestant ethic that if you are successful in your life, that's a sign that God has smiled on you and God likes you.
Okay.
So if you have success in life and you believe that you're saved, that means that you have God's blessing. So by contrast, if you're poor and unsuccessful, and then you need to be saved. You need to be, you know, embrace God, because He'll bless you. And I think this is the source of our compassionate conservatism and our faith-based charity initiatives. But if you scale this up, if we have a successful nation, that means that God has blessed that nation, right? And several places in the Bible it mentions that basically God controls or chooses the leaders of nations. So I personally don't believe that. We have a democracy here. We have
chosen.
So maybe God is in there influencing lots of different people, pulling the levers or pushing the buttons, as it is these days.
And many right now would even argue that we vote for them.
Right.
Given the last election and the hubbub that happened over that.
So, and one of the problems with this belief in God's blessing is it's a slippery slope into power hungry and greediness, right? Power hungriness, all right? Because if we have more money, that even means God likes us more, and so on, and it kind of is a positive feedback loop, and then we can go destroy other countries and say, well, God let us do it. So based on this Christian nation idea, and this is, and now we're getting to kind of the meat of why I think this is important, is that this Christian nation myth or idea is the basis of a lot of bad things that the United States is doing. And let me kind of go through them, and then in maybe a few minutes we'll open up the phone for callers. So maybe we can put the phone up and take some calls after this. Okay, first off, we have our commander-in-chief has kind of a messiah complex going on right now. He believes that he has been chosen by God and that his whims are God's holy command. And I think that's very dangerous. He has said as much that I believe God wants me to be president. He's said that. He's also reported to have said, although it's not a direct quote, he is reported to have said, God told me to strike at the Al-Qaeda, and I struck them. And then he instructed me to strike at Saddam, which I did, and now I'm determined to solve the problem in the Middle East. So that's pretty scary stuff. There's a feeling by a lot of religious leaders that 9/11 was caused by those who have left, who don't believe in God, the 9/11 attack. Jerry Falwell has claimed that he blamed us for throwing God out of the public square. That the abortionists have got to bear some of the burden for this because God will not be mocked. And when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans, the abortionists, and the feminists, and the gays, and the lesbians who are actively trying to make an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them have tried to secularize America. I point the finger in their face and I say, you helped make this happen. So that's the feeling, is that God has no longer blessed us.
Lifted his veil of protection.
Right. We're seeing a lot of empire building where Bush has said our nation has been chosen by God and commissioned by history to be a model of justice before the world. So we're supposed to go out and bring worship to God to the rest of the world and make them just like us, which unfortunately has fallen flat on its face. I hope recently with the abuses in the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. It's pretty horrible stuff. Bush has also said we must remember that our calling as a blessed nation to make the world better and confound the designs of evil men. So he's made this thing that the United States is good, therefore everybody else is bad. And Cheney has said America has the duty to act with force to construct a world in the image of the United States. So, and we've got to have all this discussion about evildoers and all that, and God is on our side, and it's just kind of like it reminds me of the belt buckles that the German stormtroopers used to wear, and the Nazi stormtroopers, God mit uns, God is on our side,
Yeah.
Pretty creepy stuff. We have stopped enforcing the Geneva Conventions for POWs for people who we call terrorists, and in our definition of terrorist, whoever that may be, whoever we decide is a terrorist, we don't enforce the Geneva Conventions for that, and I think that's very very scary. In the wake of the Iraqi war, 8,000 evangelicals were all ready to go to Iraq to convert the heathen. But they've finally thought better of that, and it might look like more of a religious war than it really is.
Yeah.
So we have this sort of world domination theme going on. We have the sabotage of the constitutional in the United States and the government checks and balances. These are very disconcerting things. We have right now 5 bills being considered by Congress to limit the power of the courts. One bill has 50 sponsors, called the Safeguarding Our Religious Liberties Act. Another one is called the 10 Commandments Defense Act. And all of these these bills have the idea that, oh, well, the judiciary can't rule on anything having to do with promotion of God, even if it is on the public square or whatever.
Yeah.
And furthermore, we're going to impeach any of the justices that try to make such a ruling.
Yes.
So it's kind of it's very, very scary that these people
would sanely propose this.
Yeah. One bill has 50 sponsors and one has 116. I think this is traitorous. I think this is active destruction of our Constitution. So I'm very upset by this. We have the Patriot Act, which is pretty horrible, undermining a lot of search and seizure laws. We have the First Amendment, the separation of church and state, no longer really being enforced by the Attorney General Ashcroft. So it's pretty scary stuff. Let's see. We have patriotism being associated with Christian belief. We have the Christian Coalition claiming that we should take America back, that they used to own somehow America, and somehow it slipped out of their fingers, and now they have to take it back, this sort of siege mentality, which is not really true. They never had it to begin with. We have the promotion of ignorance in areas where faith is relevant. We have reproductive rights, and one of my favorites is condoms being labeled ineffective by some government websites when that's not true. Stem cell research is being banned. So all of this is okay if we have a Christian nation. So in a sense, this Christian nation thing is kind of a stepping stone to bigger and uglier things. We can take callers anytime somebody wants to call in and chat with us about this.
Yeah. Again, we are live May 30th. It's the Atheist Experience. We're talking about Christian nation and such today. If you have any questions specifically on that, we'd love to hear from you. If you have something else that you want to ask us, go ahead and give us a call, and we'll get you on.
Yeah. So I've gone through a lot of stuff pretty quickly. One interesting group is a group called Christian Exodus that has decided that the United States is not a Christian nation, but they think that they should have one. So what their group is doing is they're getting together a whole bunch of people, and they're committing to move to a particular state. They're all going to descend on one state, and they've chosen South Carolina as that state. And the idea is that they're going to have enough mass there, enough people there, that they're going to basically well, I would say hijack, but they would say something else. Hijack the government there, and then eventually secede from the United States and become a Christian nation. So,
well, oddly enough, it's just linking up in my head now. South Carolina, the former co-host on this show a while back, before I was on it, is David Clark. He went to a Bible school, and he was actually studying to be a minister. And it was in Bible school, essentially, that he had some questions and things like that. He couldn't get good answers to it, so he eventually became an atheist. Eventually started co-hosting this show.
Well, he's going to hell for sure. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, in more than one sense. He took a different job and moved to, of all the places, South Carolina.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I know when he was leaving, he was talking about possibly trying to get a cable access show and see what was happening there.
Okay.
So I
wish him well.
That would be very funny.
Okay.
They'll have to fight the old co-host of the Atheist Experience if they want their Christian nation.
Right. Right. Yeah, and we'll accept callers. You don't have to be on topic for this. You can call about any atheism question you want.
Exactly. Any questions?
Separation of church and state. We're pretty fond of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. We had Pat Robertson declare that Bush has told him that God has told him that Bush will win in a landslide. So we have the big guy telling Pat. So why bother voting? I mean, what's the point of democracy? What's the point of pulling our levers in the voting booth if God has already decided that, right?
Yeah. And what happens if he doesn't win in a landslide? What if it's just another close election, or he loses?
Yeah, it must have been that he didn't quite hear it right or something. I don't know.
At what point do we say that, this is the definition of a landslide?
Right.
God must do it in these. It must be a statistically significant margin. So,
right.
actually, I had an email. This was several months back. A friend of mine's uncle or something like that had emailed them and promoted the idea of a Christian nation, saying, you know, here's several quotes by our founding fathers saying, we love the Bible and Jesus was our source of inspiration, and all these other quotes that they have out there. And basically, you know, came to the conclusion that this is a nation by for Christians. And so
It's certainly easy to find evidence for that
supporting
viewpoint
quotes,
or
yeah.
supporting quotes, that sort of thing. Right.
And so I emailed back, and I did this mostly as an exercise. She'd emailed it to me privately, just saying, thought you might get a kick out of this or something like that. And so I replied to it mostly as a mental exercise and do some research. And I sent it back to her, and I started out saying that we can play, you know,
the quote
supporting
game, right?
quote game if you want, but that's kind of a red herring, because regardless of what the original founding fathers intended or thought should happen, doesn't necessarily mean that they were right. Some of them supported slavery, not giving women the right to vote, things like that. Just because they necessarily said something doesn't make it right.
Well, and you know, things are not set in stone. I mean, one of the beautiful things about our Constitution is it can be amended.
Yes.
And if something is wrong and enough people, you need a big majority to do this, then it can change. So it's an evolving document, which is one of its great things.
And so I basically went off on the whole tangent that we have religious freedoms in this country. You can be religious, you can be any religion you want, or you can be not religious, and that is a good thing both for religions and for government. It's good for everybody involved, essentially. And so everybody likes the idea that this is a Christian nation or this is a religious nation, assuming it's their very specific brand of religion. Christianity covers everything from, you've got the evangelicals, you've got the Protestants, you've got, you know, the Shakers who handle snakes.
And Catholics.
I mean, you've got such a variety. Exactly.
Huge diversity, yes.
And so you can't really just say it's a Christian nation, because then the snake handlers are going to get annoyed when you don't have laws protecting them. And so it's not their brand of Christianity, therefore it doesn't count. And so it's going to be a huge infighting, even if we agree that it's Christian. Now, of course, that starts to discriminate and have problems against anyone who is not Christian.
And where does it end? Yeah.
Exactly, so, it's infringing on their rights.
How many Protestant sects are there, and how many,
exactly,
you know, all the way down?
Yeah. And so it's basically just opening the door for any kind of bigotry and discrimination that you want. If you start saying that this is a Christian nation, we tolerate everybody, which is what most of them would agree to, that this is a Christian nation, but we don't mind other faiths here, where they're perfectly welcome to be here, but our government is Christian or whatever. But again, that just opens the door for Christianity, for any kind of discrimination. If I go into a courtroom that supports Christianity, I don't know if I'm going to be getting a completely fair trial if I have to walk in there, and because they're going to have the Ten Commandments, and I'm going to have to swear on the Bible, and all of these other little factors are going to go along, I have to go in there and stand myself up in front of everybody and say, I don't believe what everybody else here believes. I think you're all wrong. And I don't know if I'm really going to get a fair trial at that point.
That's right.
You're going to at least get some cross-eyed looks at you. And so unless you're openly saying that, yes, non-Christians shouldn't be allowed in this country, well, that's scary, but okay. But again, you're just opening the door for that. So, all right, we have got a couple callers lined up. We're waiting to get names. Again, it is May 30th. If you have any questions or comments for us, go ahead and give us a call. The phone number is on your screen. And we are going to go to Paula. How you doing?
Hi, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, what you got for us?
Well, I'm listening to you guys. I've seen you before.
Okay.
And my question is about your definition, if you will, of atheism. And let me just preface my question with this. Is your understanding of atheism meaning like not believing in a higher power, or not ascribing to a organized approach
Okay,
to
I
a
see.
connection.
Yeah, a specific religion or religious
Yeah,
practice or
yeah.
something. Okay. Atheism at its core is simply lack of a belief in a God. It is not denial of God. It's not saying that we believe God does not exist. It's just saying we haven't seen good evidence, therefore we don't believe. Obviously, by extension, the religions, be it, Catholic, Christianity, Muslim, Jewish, whatever, has some different views of the world that we don't agree with. But essentially, it's just the lack of a belief in a God.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you believe that you are created or creators?
I've got a belly button. How about that?
Yeah, it depends on what level you're going to. I was created by my mom and dad. I created several things in my, depends on how you define create.
That's that's exactly my point, because,
Okay.
and I don't mean to interrupt, I just got to say this part,
Okay.
because it's, I think sometimes we take this, the whole concept of God, Allah, the Most High, Supreme Being, whatever you want to call this power that is beyond us as humans. Or as I personally believe that we are created.
Okay.
We are not the creators.
Okay.
I have children myself.
Okay.
So I know what I did, and then these individuals with intellect and capabilities came into being.
Okay, so even if I were to agree that we are created at some point in history, the definition or the idea of what did the creating is what's under contention here.
Exactly.
I don't believe that there is any kind of higher power or sentient being out there saying, I think the universe is a kind of cool thing to have, so I'll go ahead and make one and make all these little people in it so that they can worship me. I don't believe that there's any kind of sentient being out there doing that.
I think that we're as in people, personalizing the concept of a higher power too much. And because of that, I guess you could say I don't ascribe to atheism.
Okay.
I ascribe to the idea that, because I know, and I think that we all, if we're honest with ourselves, know that we don't do creating. We don't take something from nothing.
And
all I'm getting at is this, and because I'm not here. I didn't call. All I wanted to do was just pass on a little bit of a perspective, and I don't mean to insinuate that you all have not appreciated this perspective before, and maybe even. But the bottom line is, we all have a finite understanding of all of our existence.
Okay.
And I believe that the idea of a supreme being, a supreme power, is infinite power. Okay. And, I'm not real big on
going back a step or two.
Certain processes being the way that you appreciate it, but I do believe in the support of life.
Okay.
Because life...
Well, going back a step or two here, you were talking about creator, stuff like that.
Exactly.
At what level are you talking about here? As in, you believe that you were created. As in, it wasn't a biological fact or biological chemistry that you got here. It was some kind of divine intervention? Is that what you're saying?
No,
because I believe
that's the point I'm making, is that
everything
it's not about one or the other. It's not about an aspect of. It's about a whole total experience. And that our existence is
creation,
a total experience that goes beyond our being able to define it, understand
that's
it,
a side point, though. That's a side point, though. As for creation, we're talking about actual physical molecules and atoms and stuff.
No.
Getting from here to there.
Yeah, you ever looked at a seed? I mean, just a seed.
Yeah, nothing's being created there.
Ground,
yeah, nothing's being created there, though.
Oh, wait. Exactly. Okay, wait a minute. Hear me out.
We have actually never seen anything created.
Oh, yeah.
Period.
You look in the mirror, you have.
Okay, no, that was a biological process that got me to where I'm at right now.
Exactly.
It was just a rearrangement of stuff that was already existing.
Exactly.
That rearranged and got to me.
Exactly.
I take a tree and I rearrange the stuff there and I make a table or a chair.
Exactly. I can get to that.
And so going back even farther, I am a product of biology. That's how biological processes and chemistry and physics and stuff like that, that's how I got here. Now, if you want to keep going back and say, how did anything get here, period, well, the way that we look at it is say, we don't know. We're looking into it. Science has explanations for physics, biology, chemistry, cosmology, and so on. If you keep going back far enough, we get to a point where we're not sure, but we're looking into it.
Okay, let me
what a lot of other people like to do is say, we don't know, therefore that's what God did. And there were a lot of unknowns 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It used to be that lightning was something that we don't know. So that must be God getting pissed off at us and throwing lightning bolts down.
I hear what you're saying.
Now science has provided an answer for that. So yeah, we know it's just clouds and, positive and negative and stuff like that.
But you hear me out. Hear me out.
Okay.
You have any children?
No.
Okay, well,
I have friends who have children.
But that's not necessarily a measuring stick. This is where I'm coming from, and this is where I really, really want you guys to appreciate, because it's really not about personal knowledge.
Okay.
It's just about an appreciation of an existence.
Oh, and we definitely have that.
We didn't exist, and all of a sudden we did exist. Okay? And when I say all of a sudden, I mean that in kind of real literal sense,
Okay.
And then when you're a parent, you can really, because you remember before that little critter that became your child, who's now grown and has children of their own or whatever, weren't part of your world.
Yeah.
And one moment they was like going in your belly or whatever, especially with women. We have a real keen thing on
and
this.
We look at that.
But wait a minute, hear me out now. Hear me out. This is the deal. The deal is that we are all of us, created. Call it biology, call it chemistry, you can get names to it, you can have...
But the problem there is that created implies a lot of things, especially when you're dealing with a religious connotation, that we don't think apply. Biology and chemistry and physics and stuff like that is what got me to where I'm at. Yeah. If you want to call that creation,
and that doesn't mean
that's kind of a strange way of doing it.
We don't have a sense of awe and a sense of wonder and a sense of bonding to our children.
No, it's not just about bonding. It's about the fact that you didn't exist and then you did, and you can't talk about.
It's wonderful.
Women, you are beyond. You both of you, we all are beyond our physical manifestation.
Yeah. It's an amazing. It's amazing.
Souls now.
Yeah.
Yes, we are beyond we are all beyond our physical manifestation.
Okay, but we have no. Again, that's another thing that we don't agree with. I don't think I am any more than, and by saying I mean my personality, my wants, my needs, my. What I do in the morning, stuff like that. What makes me different from you and everybody else in the world is my brain chemistry. It's genetics, which again is a science and physical product, and it's my upbringing, which again is a physical process.
Man, as a part of understanding, like you're talking about, we understand now. We learn more about what makes this happen or that happen, or through study, through et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, you will never be able to create something from nothing.
Yeah, but I don't see a problem with that.
You will never be, because it's all of it exists outside of our realm of possibility, because we come here as a result of. We aren't the originating factor.
Okay, but that's all getting a bit too esoteric. That's all getting a bit esoteric to be any real value in the world.
It's It's like
bring this back down to the world. Are we talking about?
See, that's where we're coming to a problem, because
Okay, you believe that there is some other realm
from an earthbound perspective.
Okay, let me make sure I got you here.
Uh-huh.
What you're saying is that we have a physical universe.
Exactly.
But we also, in addition to that, have some kind of spiritual or emotional or other
we're not talking
realm.
emotions here, because the emotions are just have to do with an expression of our
Brain chemistry, we would say.
That we experience here on this level.
Okay.
But see,
Right.
life is an ongoing process, and that's why I brought up the seed thing.
Okay.
It's just like you said, it's a combination of this chemical, this biological, this whatever, and all of a sudden it manifests itself, and we're being able to experience it on this level. But the bottom line is, it existed before we could experience it on this level, and it will continue to exist on infinitely, because that is the process of, call it man, call it, because I believe in evolution, but I also believe in a supreme being, and that's where I'm coming from. I don't
well, we're going to go ahead and let you go at this point.
I haven't debated this.
So.
All I'm saying is that I would just like to share a perspective that says that we are all beyond the limitations of what we on earth put ourselves, and I think that there's a power that can be tapped into.
Okay, well, we're going to let you go here because we got some other callers lining up. But like I say, thanks a lot for calling, and if you have any other comments, keep watching the show and give us a call back a little bit later, or next week or something. Thanks for calling. As for, again, having something outside of this realm, having other ways to experience things, or that, yeah, I mean, we definitely have an appreciation that life, for instance, is an amazing thing.
Yeah. And we have limited
that.
senses to view the world. That's why we develop scientific instruments to aid our senses.
But just saying that, there are things that we may not be able to perceive, and therefore we should hearken to that.
It's the God of the gaps argument. We don't know about something, therefore there must be God.
Exactly. It's a bit simplistic just to say that, yeah, there's stuff that we don't understand, therefore just open your minds and believe in God or believe in a creator or whatever. No, if there's things that we don't understand, we should try and work on that.
Yeah, and scientists have a sense of wonder. They're just as fascinated by it, but they want to understand why. And
it's like going to a park or a garden or something like that with kids. A lot of times they don't really appreciate it all that much because it's just a bunch of plants, big deal. And so little kids sometimes will make up the idea that there are fairies living in this garden, there are elves and there are trolls, and that makes it all that much more exciting. We look at the garden and say, yeah, it's just plants and animals, it's an ecosystem, it's amazing stuff. But we appreciate it for what it is. We don't have to make up the idea that there is some infinitely powerful God who created this and put it here just for our pleasure and our happiness. No, I mean it's amazing as it is. I don't need anything else to make it a really neat thing.
Yeah,
so it kind of is as is.
There's no doubt the universe is a wonderful place.
Exactly. So, all right, let's go on to Phil. How you doing?
Fine, guys.
What you got for us?
I'd like to steer the direction of the conversation back towards the U.S., the United States being the so-called Christian nation.
All right.
This has been irritating me for years, long before 9/11, let's put it that way. What bothers me so much about it is that, you said that George Bush is this evangelical guy, and frankly, I don't believe it. I think he puts that face forward to his conservative base, mainly the religious right, and he puts himself out as that person. Now, when he does his foreign policy boogie with regard to Israel, Iraq, so on and so forth, he does it in such a way that he demonizes the Arabs, the Islam folks. And it makes it more palatable for the American public to accept the death of these people, because they're all essentially brainwashed into believing these people are not.
Well, that's a common tactic in wars, is to denigrate your enemy. So if they're not human, then it's much easier to kill them. It's not as many moral problems in doing that.
Well, it's one thing like during World War II where we had cartoons of little jackbooted Hitlers running around. That's one way of denigrating them. This is on a whole different level of religious terms.
Yeah.
That they are, it just drives me crazy. And, and to think that I've watched the 700 Club just to kind of, see what the
oh, you're a brave man. I don't think my blood pressure would take that.
Oh, God. During about the first 10 minutes of Pat Robertson's spiel, he goes on about Israel. Now, this guy is not prepared to give up 1 square inch of, Israeli real estate for the Palestinians, all based on this bogus religious myth about Armageddon.
Yeah.
And it all goes back to that same story. And what's so bizarre about it is, apparently my understanding of Armageddon is once Israel basically gets control of all that land, it's going to bring on the end of the world.
Exactly.
So it's like they're trying to perpetuate their own thing through their own religious deal. It's just bizarre to the max.
Yeah. Oh, it is. It is. We have the Jews basically believing that God gave them this land and it's theirs, and to everybody else should go to hell, figuratively. I guess they don't believe in hell. I don't believe. And then you have the Christians sort of saying, well, this is our little portal off to Orgasmo or whatever at the end times, and we're gonna those Jews won't be there. They won't be part of that because they don't believe in Jesus. Yeah. So in effect, the two nations are using each other. Yes, it's very creepy. And let me just note that when I'm on next time, which will be 4 weeks from today, I'll be talking about the end times and the rapture and all that, and it's very scary stuff. I fully agree with you.
Yeah. So you're going to do that next week, or
no, 4 weeks from now is the next time I'll be on.
I always watch a show on Sunday, so it's one of my little Sunday rituals is watching the show. But
well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I just can't stand the idea of U.S. foreign policy being based on biblical myth. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I think what's scary is a lot of people don't realize that that's going on, and this is again this problem of independent media, which I consider one of the biggest problems, is that we really need to have a media that can dive in and expose these things and educate people as to what's going on.
Yeah. I have seen 1 or 2 articles out there concerning this. The most recent one, I didn't actually read the entire article, but the gist of it was that, again, it is a very religious government that we have right now. Bush and so on is extremely religious. And before doing any major policy changes, he's consulting with biblical experts who say, this is what should be happening, and this is what's dictated in Revelations 26:8, and therefore, we should be doing this, that, and the other to bring around the end times and, have the second coming. I don't know how much weight I actually put in that, just because it's really freaking scary. But
well, it's also kind of borderline ridiculous too, right? I mean,
exactly.
It's hard to say it with a straight face, but at the same time, if it's really the source of our national policy, I'm very afraid.
Yeah.
It's very frightening.
All right, guys, let's move on to another caller.
Okay, take care.
Thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have seen a couple articles like that, not too many. And again, I don't know how much weight I put in that. I don't know if you've seen any of those articles yourself.
Yeah.
But.
Well, yeah, and thankfully we have the internet, and we have a lot of other media, like The Guardian over in England, and I've seen some good news stories out of Canada that kind of get to the heart of this. And even though the United States isn't exposing that very well in their media, it can be found. These things can be found. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. Again, we are live May 30th, and happy to take calls from anybody else. Go ahead and give us a call, and your phone number is on the screen. We're going to go on to George. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Pretty well. What you got for us?
Good. I just had a couple of questions because I just got to tail end of what you were talking about, so I don't want to address you from a foundation of ignorance. I would prefer you to tell me exactly what you're saying, so I don't be commenting on things that I'm not sure.
Well, the topic of the show today.
References. Okay. I heard you say something about you're not sure of our origin. You don't know where we came from.
In terms of, I'll just clarify that really quickly. Again, my physical being came from biological chemical processes. Which came from my mom and dad, which came from their mom and dad, and so on and so forth. The point where we get to the I don't knows is the Big Bang area, where essentially what actually created that, what caused that. We have a couple theories running around right now, but we have no good, solid evidence any particular way saying this theory is better than that theory. So that's the point that we get to the really big I don't knows.
Okay, so then I hear what you're saying. You're saying you don't know where you came from, but you acknowledge the fact that you are here.
Well, we don't know where matter came from. We don't know where matter and such came from.
Okay.
Again, going far back. How I got here,
But you
I'm pretty
acknowledge
sure
that
of
you
that.
are here.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so then consequently you had to have an origin. Something caused you to be.
Yeah,
Correct.
and again, I would say biology,
Okay, but then everything you made mention also of matter.
Okay.
Do you have any knowledge concerning what the scientists have concluded concerning the origin of matter? Has matter always existed, or do they conclude that sometimes matter had to come into being, into existence?
There are different theories on that.
There are
Okay.
different theories about that right now, and again, that's one of the big I don't knows.
Okay, well,
and we don't know.
Can we
There
maybe,
is no.
Okay, then
jump ahead here. Are you going to claim that, oh well, since all this stuff has been created, there must be a creator, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Just like the chair you're sitting in, you wouldn't take the position that it just came into being.
Our stock response to that is who created the creator.
Okay, because there has to be a starting point. The creator
Why can't
has
the starting point be the universe?
Hold on. The creator, if you're going to ask me the question, now let me answer.
Okay, please do.
Okay, then. From my studies, my understanding and my knowledge base, or even of science, says that matter has not always existed. That matter does not.
Well, matter and
eternal.
energy are interchangeable.
Matter is not eternal. So then, consequently, something outside of matter that is not matter had to cause matter to be.
Not necessarily.
But if it's not eternal, then matter exists. Then something had to cause matter to come into being.
One, who's to say it's not?
If it did not exist,
well,
if
again,
scientists conclude that
let's
it didn't
not
exist,
jump
but yet it
ahead
came.
here. Let's stop and analyze this along the way.
Okay.
One, matter may be eternal. It may not. You're saying that it had to have a beginning. Well, why?
Okay, because it exists.
So?
Consequently, something, and scientists conclude science, pure science, and let me state this, pure science does not disagree with the reality of God. What disagrees with the reality of God is theory. And what you present is a theory. Even you say yourself, you are not certain. So you present theory as if it is fact.
Yeah.
And so
but scientific theories are significantly different things.
There's a law. Now, law. What is a law?
Okay.
What is a law?
Let's go back to...
What is a law?
No, let's go back
to... What is a law? Can you answer that question?
I can hang up if need be.
Okay, you can, but I'm asking you a question. Will you just answer that, and then I'll make my
I'm going
statement?
back a step here.
Okay, what is
a scientific theory is something that is supported by a significant amount of evidence.
A theory
in common hang on. A theory in common parlance, as in to Joe walking down the street. What's a theory? It's a good idea. It doesn't necessarily it's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's a good idea. In scientific terms, a theory is something that is backed up by a significant amount of fact.
No, that's not true.
Significant amount of evidence.
It simply says there's some evidence to support it.
Yes, there is significant amounts of evidence to support it.
There is something that might suggest that is the case beyond an educated guess. An educated guess is an hypothesis.
Yeah,
then you
theory.
put that to test.
Exactly.
I've been to school. I understand what
Okay,
it is.
okay.
I know the steps.
Okay, good.
Now,
good.
so I'm asking you, what is a law?
Law?
A law is something that we observe in the world that follows a formula. Like we have the law of gravity that says that two bodies move a certain way and have a certain attractive force, and it's a mathematical model for something we see in the world.
In other words, it's something that is beyond a theory. It is something that has been proven to be this is the way it happens consistently over and over and over again.
Well, no,
correct?
not necessarily, because laws are basically explanations of what we observe, but not necessarily the reasons behind it.
Let me ask you a question. When I say, is a law beyond a theory, yes or no?
They're different animals.
Okay, is a law beyond
let me give you
hypothesis?
let me give you for example. We have a law of gravity.
Can you answer that yes or no?
No, we can't. Here's the reason
Can't
why.
answer that. Well, have you ever heard of...
Okay, no.
Have you ever heard of...
Okay, here's the answer.
Okay. We're sorry to do that, but...
We're taking things one step at a time here. And if you're not going to let us get our answers out, we're going to put you back on hold and eventually hang up on you. So, did you have something?
To complete the thought here, I mean, we have the law of gravity, which basically says that there's an attractive force between bodies based on their mass, some constants, and the distance between them. So this is something that we observe in the world. But in reality, the theory of gravity, how gravity works, and the underlying thing of it, has actually been a source of a lot of scientific investigation. And there's a lot of different theories, and we have the string theory and some of these other things that are sort of coming out now to try to explain these things. So in a sense, you know, we've had the law of gravity since Newton's time, forever.
Yeah.
Kepler
And
all those
actually
guys. But the theory behind it has lagged quite a bit in our understanding of it, and it's only coming to light now. And I wouldn't say even now it's black and white.
Yeah.
Completely. So
it was originally that we had Newton's laws of motions and bodies and gravity, and for what we observed, planets and stars and galaxies, that worked really well. It still does. Now when we, you know, create satellites and whatever, we're going to slingshot them around Jupiter to get out to the outer solar system, we still use those same laws. We now know that they're not correct. They're a really good approximation, but they're not perfect. Einstein's theory of curved space and that type of thing is actually a much better example of how things work, but it's more complicated.
Right.
And so Newton's laws apply and they work pretty well, but they're not perfect. So again, the theory of how all this works and why it is the way it is, we don't know. But again, we have laws to describe what we see. We don't know exactly why it's like that, but that's how it is. So.
Right.
Did you have another point for us?
Okay, let me say this, and then I will go ahead and get off. When I look at what I have learned through even school and studying about laws, there is a law that basically says, where there is design, there must be a designer. You sit in a room that's been designed. Where there is order, there must be somebody that put it into order. No one would ever say for one moment, if they would walk into a room and look at the furniture in that room, that someone just threw a pile of wood into that room, and then over a period of a million or 2 million or 10 million years, it automatically grew into a couch covered with leather. We already know that wherever there is design, there must be a designer, and the designer is always greater than that which is designed.
Okay, so who designed God?
There's a lot of evidence that support the existence of God.
Okay, and what, again, we have laws, we have ways of describing the world which explain why planets form the way they do, for instance, and why solar systems work the way they do, for instance. We have things that we can observe and say why they happen that way. We don't have any evidence that there is some greater being who says, this is the way it shall be because I say it so.
Well, you said a few minutes ago that you didn't know. There are theories.
Yeah, but we don't have any evidence.
But you stated as if that's a fact. You said, I don't know where we came from. But one of those things that you don't know is
yes, we don't know
the fact that there is a God.
Yeah, we don't know
uncategorically that there is no God. But you said
that's correct.
You don't know.
That's correct. As atheists, we do not say there is no God, period, and we know it for a fact. There could be a God.
Okay.
And until you provide any evidence for that God, we're going to put it in the same category as unicorns and elves.
Okay, that's
now,
fine.
We have evidence of, let's say, string theory. We have other explanations of how things came to be, and we're looking into those. We don't know for a fact that it was this theory or that theory.
Okay.
We've got some evidence to support them, to support all the different theories that we have. We've got some evidence to support them, but we're still kind of duking it out in the scientific realms.
Okay. Now, let me just ask a question
until somebody provides evidence for the God hypothesis, then it's the same one as, you know, some outside of time and space hippopotamus farted the universe into existence. Okay. It's got the same amount of evidence behind it.
Okay. Now, let me ask you a question, and then I've got to go.
Okay.
Would you guys be open to having a forum where we can put what we believe to be evidence supporting the existence of God before your public, so that they can hear it, and in a very orderly fashion? Yeah. No argument. You present your case, and we present ours. You present your affirmative, I present my affirmative. You rebut that, I rebut yours. No argument, just the facts presented. Would you be interested and open to having a forum like that where that goes on, so that we can set the evidence before your atheist community?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do I get it? Just contact this.
Yes, I understand your question. My answer is that's mostly what the show is for.
No, but I'm talking about
the Christians and the religious side have their forum to get their ideas out. They have the Christian bookstores out there.
Sure.
They have
Answers in Genesis.
they have
all
the
sorts of
Bible.
stuff.
They have four, I think it's like 4 or so, possibly more than that, dedicated channels on cable network. That's nothing but religious views.
I understand.
They have their viewpoints out there, more than enough. This is our hour and a half.
Okay, so you would not be interested in having someone who believes in the reality of a living God coming forth on your show to present an argument in a debate format with you?
Because this is our show and this is our hour and a half, no.
We're happy to debate you. We
Again,
have lots of forums for
exactly.
that, so we're not trying to say that
Exactly.
we're not interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
It's just our airtime is quite precious, and we
Exactly.
intend to use it the way we want to.
Okay. Well, that's okay, but I just want you to know that one of the things that you don't know is that there is a God. And I appreciate at least you acknowledging that you don't know that for a fact, that there is no God. So I just encourage you to at least pick up the Bible and read it for yourself. Forget about listening to all of the
we have, but
all of the
So
religious
you've had this
messages on the
you've had this
television, because there's so much
10-minute
confusion.
call, and you
Yes,
haven't
indeed.
presented any evidence for God.
Okay. You haven't presented any for my evidence for him existing. To me is overwhelming.
You're making the wild claim.
Okay,
We're not
we're
making
going to
the
go
wild
ahead
claim.
and go on to the next caller here.
Thank
Thank you very
Thanks a
much
lot
for your
for
call.
calling.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
We have this email address, the TV
Exactly.
at atheistcommunity.org. If you'd like to chat with us out of band, chat with us and
Exactly. We
present
have-
your evidence or whatever. We may shuffle that conversation over to a more appropriate forum, but we would encourage you to chat with us.
Exactly. This is the live air forum that we have as the TV show. We do have TV at atheist-community.org. If you have any questions or comments, you can write us there. And also, if you want to just find out some more atheist views and viewpoints and argue and debate and discuss things, we also have the Ask an Atheist, which is a Yahoo group. If you go to groups.yahoo.com and just do a search for Ask an Atheist.
Well, it's available off of our website, and maybe the
That's
guys
true.
behind the scenes can put up the website. And we have some, there it is. Yeah, okay.
atheist-community.org, link to our email lists, and again, that's an open forum for anybody who wants to come on and
Quite
ask
a few
questions.
of our members watch that, and quite a few of
Exactly.
atheists around the country monitor that as well. And I'd be
Exactly.
very surprised if this man had anything new to say that we haven't already heard.
Yeah, we've been around the block a few times in terms of evidence.
Not
for
that we
God
know
and stuff
everything,
like
but we've heard a lot of
Exactly.
the arguments already. So
that. Doing this show has been on the air now for I believe it's 7 years. It's about 6.5 years right now. It'll be 7 years later this year, and so we've heard a lot of it. But anyway, please give us a call. You may have something new for us. We are going to go on to Steve. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Okay, what you got for us?
Hey, listen, if my God is not conscious,
Okay.
am I an atheist?
Is this
So tell me a little bit more about your God. Your God is
what
powerful, but doesn't
Yeah, what-
have a brain. Is that what you're telling me?
what
Well, I guess
Is that the
I guess
idea?
it would be all powerful if it was like a string theory kind of God. Basically, if everything was electromagnetic, gravity, string theory, then I guess you could say it would be all powerful.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be conscious.
Right.
Is it some kind of supernatural force outside? Is it something that science cannot explain and nail down and describe? As in, given enough time, given enough knowledge, stuff like that, could science kind of nail this thing down and say, okay, we
understand
know
it.
how it works?
No, but science can prove that that there's not enough material in the universe to build a computer to figure it out.
42.
I think the line of questioning that it actually has is if your God isn't supernatural, then it's not what we would call a God, and we're not really talking about
It is
the same thing that most of the other callers are calling about.
It would then be a part of the natural universe that we perhaps just have yet to describe.
Well, then I would have to ask.
We're
who
trying to
made that
understand.
who made that definition? Where in history did thousands of years ago? Where did God become no longer an abstract idea and became a a living being, who.
Well,
my
I
belief
think
is
it was.
that the word the
I think the key
idea
word
of
here
God
is
was long
supernatural.
before- but that long before we started associating,
Yeah, I think.
things with living beings.
Yeah.
I mean, even the weatherman, who is a meteorologist and a scientist,
Okay.
will call a hurricane he or she.
Yeah.
And as authority, as an authority and as a scientist, I don't believe that he really believes that hurricane has a consciousness.
Well,
But
of course, it's
he is
just
an
because of
authority and he's
who
used
we are and how we work and how we look at the world that we humanize everything. When we sit down and, a couple thousand years ago, we made a fire. We caught a rabbit and we skinned it and we cooked it and we made dinner. We can see that we are a creative species. We can make stuff. And so when we look out at the world and we see, all the trees and the fields and the rabbit before we killed it, we assume that something must have made that. And so and essentially, again, our brains are saying it must be some kind of really powerful person out there that could make all of this stuff. And so again, it's how we view the world. We want to have a story behind it. We want there to be, just because it's how we're rigged. We want there to be someone to tell us that this is how it all works.
Well, I totally understand that. When I'm at a stoplight and I'm yelling at the light and there's nobody else in the car, who am I talking to?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
We do that all the time, don't we?
then nobody would be an atheist because everybody
Yeah.
does that.
Yeah. But we acknowledge that there is no one actually listening. We're just yelling out to ourselves in frustration. It starts getting into religious and spirituality when you think somebody actually is listening.
I think at the time that I'm actually yelling at the light, I really want to believe, I think I really do believe that I am talking to the light if I'm angry enough. If the emotion...
But the light doesn't listen to you.
Well, it's also like the NRA. I'm sure some of those people talk to their guns.
Exactly.
Their pets, huh?
Exactly.
And I feel that it's just universal. That there is a I don't know what I would put after God to make it that type of universal feeling.
I would just kind of call that the human psychology.
Yep.
I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's anything supernatural. I don't think it's anything creative. I don't think it's anything real outside of just brain chemistry, and that's how we deal with the world.
You can't pigeonhole it any more than just psychology in general.
I'm not versed enough in psychology and those areas to really narrow it down and give some kind of technical term to it. Again, in my eyes, it's more an idea of wishful thinking, and this is how we've always viewed the world. And so we kind of just take that a few steps back to where I don't think we really need to.
We don't need to have wishful thinking?
Well, just because I like the idea that somebody's watching out for me and God's up there and he really loves me and cares about me and I'm going to live forever, just because I really like the idea of that doesn't make it real.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, thanks for calling. All right, we've got a few minutes left, time for a couple more calls. So let's go on to, let me see. Let's go on to Kurt. How you doing?
Hey, how you fellas?
Okay.
How are you?
What you got for us?
Yeah, I acknowledge, and as I would imagine you do, that a debate, discussion about the existence of God or the nature of God is argumentative, and within a lot of forums it would go on forever without really coming to any conclusion that satisfies everybody. Having said that, and then having watched your show periodically over the last several years, I find a lot of your content is either criticizing religion or being cynical about religion or bringing up news stories where some logical absurdity is pointed out. And I'm wondering, beyond simply criticizing religion or criticizing people of faith or a belief system, what is it that your point of view stands for. I mean, what do you hope to accomplish within the context of all the effort that you put into your organization and into your show, just beyond that being critical?
Okay. We try not to have direct criticism in that way on the show all that much. We've actually changed the format in the last couple months now, where we're actually giving it used to be random news stories at the beginning, and a lot of those did go on to just, here's all the crazy and wacky things that Christians are doing this week.
But we did have some complaints because, about that. The show today, I'm sort of saying, look at what these people believe, and look at what horrible things are happening as a consequence of this belief, right? So in a deeper sense, yes, we are criticizing.
To a certain extent. But going back to, I guess, the reason behind it, I see that if you have a belief in the supernatural, in something that can't be explained, if you're going to open the door to that type of belief, then the door is opened up to other things. Now, 99% of people out there who believe in God have perfectly rational views of the world. They go about their day-to-day business and they're perfectly normal. But when you've got this belief in something, and it's not something that's based on fact or science or evidence, it's just simply, well, I believe, then that opens the door to dangerous idea. Andrea Yates was a woman who just had the belief that God exists. And her ideas, and it's backed up by the Bible, because the Bible essentially says this, is that she had kids, and if they were actually raised in this world with all the corruption and the crime and the bad things that are happening, then they would most likely go to hell. And so she killed them all. She killed, I think it was her 5 kids. Having beliefs that are not based on science and based on reason and rationality can be a dangerous thing. And that's what we're trying to illustrate here. We're not saying all Christians are going to start killing their kids.
Yeah, but are you saying that Andrea Yates' psychosis was a result of the beliefs posited by Christianity?
The religion definitely
played into it, for sure.
Played into it, and it certainly helped it out.
But let me take another tack at your question. I think you're asking a good question. Many of the things that we present are sort of negative examples. Don't do this, right? So the question I think you're asking is what do we stand for? And one of our big things is the separation of church and state. In fact, that's more or less part of our constitution as a group at the Atheist Community of Austin. But as a wider group, many of us are humanists, which is a moral system based on that humans can take care of ourselves, we can solve our problems, we can work together. We don't need to believe in gods to solve our problems, and those sorts of things. And I think that's perhaps the sort of thing that you're perhaps wishing that we would do more of. Perhaps I don't know.
No, I'm not wishing that you would do more of it. I guess I wish that you would do at least a barely adequate job of trying to explain where you're coming from, rather than simply taking a negative viewpoint, as it has to do with either a Christian belief system or some other belief system.
Well,
because you have not really in the several years that I've been watching you, you've never articulated a belief system which is systematic and rational, or at least would have an appeal to somebody who who would be open to reason, or who would be open to new ideas.
This is constructive criticism, and we'll take that to heart.
To kind of answer this, I guess, we are mostly looking into scientific naturalism. We promote there being a naturalistic explanation to things in the world. Atheism at its core is simply lack of a belief in a God. Therefore, we have a lot of comments on religion, because religion does some strange things, and it goes against the idea that you should have a scientific worldview. There are some things in a religious worldview that say this is just how it is because God says so. And that's where we have a problem. We like this naturalistic explanation. We like how science has explained things and will continue to explain more things in the future.
Yeah,
that's where we're coming from.
I appreciate that. I think one of the things about which we all need to be careful is in making assumptions about a belief system or a structure of somebody just because we place them into a particular category.
Of course.
I am certainly an advocate and a supporter and proponent and practitioner of scientific method.
Okay.
But that does not mean that I necessarily have just an absence or a vacancy of belief in a supreme being. And for you to assume that because I don't have an appreciation or comprehension of scientific method is really a fallacy in your view.
Okay, and no, I'm not. There are lots of scientists out there, very intelligent people who go through their day-to-day lives and they build bridges or whatnot. They do these, very complicated things, but they have this one little, nook in their life where their scientific and their rational mind is just kind of set aside, and they choose to believe in a God, not because there's good evidence for it or not because it's been proven to be true, but just because it feels right.
Or they were brought up that way, perhaps.
True. And that's where we kind of have issues, as in, why? Why is that? Why that area is going to be set aside from all the other areas in the life?
Well, I could address that. If we had a forum like the other guy was asking for, I could address it. I can't do it in the short time that we have available here. I think in closing, one of the things that I would point out is that absent from any of the things that you are presenting or saying in any of the content that you provide, I don't see a structured system that seeks to either codify or in some other way establish or ratify any sense of ethics or morals where there are boundaries as it relates to one's behavior that you can posit as being influential, as it has to do with either influencing other people or in support of positive values.
And we actually have done that.
Such things exist. We haven't presented them.
Yeah, and actually we have had lots of shows where we talk about morality and ethics, and the fact that we don't need some kind of supernatural being or something outside of people to describe why it's bad to kill and steal. We do have reasoning behind that, and we have come up with good ideas on it. Mm-hmm. We're a social species. We have to live together. The world works better if we don't kill and steal from each other. That's an extreme nutshell, but that's essentially where it comes from. We have to live together. So that's where we're coming from. That's how we get our morality and our ethics, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I think that's great that you can articulate it at such a very fundamental level. I think the next step would be then to determine what it is within the human being's nature that causes that perspective to be elevated and which then gives it content. And I think that if you take it one step further back, that's the point that I've never seen you get to, and I don't really think you can or will get to it just because of the nature of the perspective that you have and the manner in which you want to present it.
Okay. Well, what do you mean by going back a step? I'm confused at that.
Okay. Are you familiar with any of the works or writings of Reinhold Niebuhr?
Not by name, no.
Well, that tells me a whole lot. He was a preeminent sociologist, social scientist who also happened to be Christian, who probably did more for the interests of peace, especially in the political and existential community, than any other man, right, prior to World War II, during World War II, and then in the Cold War immediately following, as it had to do with atomic weapons.
Okay.
And he was an ethicist, really, when you boil it all down, and his 2-volume work, The Nature and Destiny of Man, really speaks to the kinds of things that I'm talking about that should be addressed if you were to take your view of ethics, which I think is very unilateral and very, very simple, and take it to the point where it has enough sophistication where you can start explicating some specifics rather than this common good statement that you made a while ago.
And as I qualified with that, that is an extreme nutshell. I mean, that is not a full explanation, which obviously I can't get into in the next minute and a half. But I was just illustrating the point that we have gone over that to a large extent on the show.
Right. Well, let me.
But I do want to get back really quickly, though. What did you say the name of this guy was? Neil or something like that?
Reinhold, R-I-N-E-H-O-L-D, Niebuhr, N-I-E-B-U-H-R. And it's his seminal work is The Nature and Destiny of Man. It's a 2-volume work.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead and look that up. Might have something on that next week.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go. We have got 50 seconds left on the air.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for calling and hanging up. Okay. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Thank you very much.
Just insert real quick.
Okay.
Many of us are secular humanists. Secular humanists is a pretty well evolved, not fully evolved set of morals and such. And I recommend people take a look at that. Maybe we can do a show on that on some point.
Yeah. Do a Google search for secular humanism and see what comes up. Haven't done that. Not going to vouch for it.
We're running out of time.
But anyway, yes, everybody have a great week. Thanks a lot for watching.
Thank you to our callers.
Yep, thank you for our callers. Thank you, Don, for being a co-host this week.
My pleasure.
Next week, we are going to be having Karen Glasser on.